Pyro Unleashed presents the Finale3D Tip of the Week, sponsored by Finale Fireworks.
All right, well, this is episode 1 of the weekly Finale3D Tip of the Week.
Absolutely.
Really looking forward to this. Want to say thank you again, Drew, for coming on and starting this off. I think this is going to be super helpful for our listeners as well as Finale3D users or those that are looking to get into Finale3D. I use Finale3D. It is so powerful, so helpful for creating musicals, not only musicals, but just regular displays for city shows. So I think this is going to be a really helpful tool. So yeah, anything else, Donnie?
I'm selfishly excited for this because I have lots of questions. I want to know how to do lots of different things, and so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to ask a bunch of questions and to find all the secrets that are out there that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So I understand how this is going now. You guys are like, we need training. We'll just tell Drew to come on the podcast. He'll give us training. We won't have to pay for the training.
Exactly. There you go.
We're going to publish it. I see. I was not aware of this. Oh, it's all good. No, I'm really looking forward to it too. I appreciate you guys inviting me to do this. It's always great to create content that helps the community. Right?
For sure.
I get an email. Actually, I get a lot of email. But anytime I get an email, it's very much one-on-one. I can tell one person how to do one thing, and that helps with that one person, which is great.
Yeah.
But content like this, in so much as it's available online, it helps anybody who finds it. So we reach a larger audience, and I think that's terrific. So I appreciate the invite, and it's great to be here and kind of walk you guys through whatever you'd like to see.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to kind of start off fairly basic today for those that are maybe looking to get into Finale3D. Maybe we start off with the three different options of tiered pricing for starting off with Finale3D. So, Drew, do you want to walk us through the pricing as well as what each of those entail and why the $1,049 really is not a bad price and everybody should just drop it? They need to get it, spend it every year. And
your words, not mine. Yeah, absolutely. So I have here on my screen, I'm sure I'll maximize it here so make it a little bit easier to see. I have the Finale3D homepage. At this moment, there's an advertisement for Pyro Jam. We can talk a little bit about Pyro Jam at some point too. But generally, the website is only advertising Pyro Jam seasonally. So if you're seeing this video 6 months from now, this advertisement might not be here out of season for Pyro Jam, but it's currently February 2025, so the Pyro Jam competition is active. But when you come to our homepage, there's a lot of content about kind of the overview of what Finale can do. David jumped right into versions of Finale. So there are different versions of Finale that have different capabilities, different feature sets. And so if you head over to the pricing page, we have some colorful cards that try to encapsulate like the key features in each version and present the pricing as well. This is also the page you come to purchase Finale3D if you wanted to. When you're just getting started, there's no obligation to purchase Finale. You can hit this red button and download the software and install it on your computer. It will run in demo mode without a license. Demo mode runs in perpetuity. Demo mode is this exact same features as what you get by buying the light version, except you can't save your work. Okay. So if you want to experience Finale3D Lite, but without the ability to save, you can do that in perpetuity for free, no cost. Okay. If you wanted to try the hobbyist version or the pro version, or you want to try the light version with the ability to save, you can hit this green button and get a free trial, 14-day free trial. In terms of the versions, there are really 3 versions of Finale. One is called Light, one is called Hobbyist, one is called Pro. And I totally recognize that, like, out of the gate, just reading through these bullet points it can be a little bit overwhelming. So to kind of sum it up, what I would say is, if you're just getting into Pyro and the idea of scripting a Pyro musical show or using a digital firing system is intimidating, then the light version is a great kind of place to start. It's a way to dip your toe in without being overwhelmed by the plethora of options that exist in the higher level versions of Finale. It's also pretty cheap to get into.
Yeah.
Further, you can upgrade from the light version to hobbyist or to pro anytime. You're not stuck with one version for a year. You want to downgrade, it's a different conversation. But if you want to upgrade, that's no problem at all. So and I'll give you an example of like the user who might be ideal for light. You just bought your first firing system. You only have a few modules. You're shooting a show that only uses a few positions. Maybe you're putting less than $1,000 of product into the show. Maybe consumer cakes, maybe some single shots, but pretty limited. That's kind of like the fit for light. As soon as you move kind of up in terms of any kind of bigger shows, it really puts you into the hobbyist tier. The hobbyist is really kind of like the sweet spot. Oftentimes when you look at websites where you have different versions of products, you have like, Finale's, the company's choice of which version is the most popular kind of thing. We don't have that because it just really depends on the person. But hobbyist is really the sweet spot because on the spectrum of features, hobbyists get to like 60% the way to pro, but only at a third of the price. So hobbyist is also a great starting point if you're not intimidated by scripting and you plan to design some bigger shows, or you just want more capability. There are some specific reasons to get into hobbyist. For example, if you have ambitions to add things other than traditional fireworks to your show. So if you want to add flame machines that are controlled by DMX, or lights, or cryojets, or other types of special effects that pyro firing systems can now control, you need the hobbyist version to control those. Another reason you might get into the hobbyist version is because you want to export a video of your show. It's really common. Like you've created this awesome design in Finale3D, you want to show it off, you want to publish to YouTube. The hobbyist version is the lowest version of Finale that does that. A couple other key points, and I'll move on to pro. One is, if you're shooting a show that uses shells or single shots, anything other than cakes, you're probably using some kind of racks, mortar racks, single shot racks. If you want the ability to do any kind of calculation for how many racks you need for your show, you got to be at least at the hobbyist level. The light version of Finale gives you a beautiful simulation of your show of all the same effects as hobbyist and pro, but it doesn't have the concept of racks at all. It's entirely on you to figure out how many racks you need, which can be hard if you've got lots of different angles and lots of positions.
Absolutely.
The hobbyist gives you that ability. Last but not least, hobbyist is not mentioned even as a bullet point, but one reason people upgrade is because they have a big inventory. So once you have more than like 20 or 30 products, maybe 50, and you don't want to like hand key in things, you really want to step up to hobbyist, because light is very much like you can bring your products into Finale that you have. Like if you have a stash of fireworks, you can bring those into Finale, you can pull them from catalogs, but it's kind of one by one and it's manual. If you have a big stash of fireworks with like 50 to 100 part numbers, different cakes, things, with hobbyist you can import from a spreadsheet. So it really automates the process of getting your inventory in. And if you're a company, you really want you might be using our sister company software, Finale Inventory. David can speak to that.
Yes.
And you can't use Finale Inventory with the light version. So, guys, you want to add anything before I jump up to pro?
No, I think, I mean, I think we both use pro, and that's kind of the sweet spot for us.
Once you go pro, there's no going back.
Once you go pro, there's no going back.
You're stuck there. You got to ask forgiveness from your wife forever.
Well, and really, like for me, the the justification, and I know I've talked to several bigger names in Pyro, Tim Jameson being one of them, and he's explained it very well to me. It's if you're doing 10 shows a year and you're making any little bit of amount of money, I mean, you can divide this $1,000 between those 10 shows. You're only out $100 per show, and there's so much wealth of knowledge and accessory in pro, like it's so worth it. So yeah. Always, so if we want to jump into that, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, like David, what you're saying is spot on. What I've always struggled with is how do you present, in a concise way, like the magic of pro. It really takes sort of someone trying it and really trying for a while and having that that light bulb moment, like, oh my God, like how did I live without this? And it's sort of this abstract, intangible thing that you never knew you needed because you didn't know. It's like the iPhone. I remember the iPhone comes out, like, why do I need an iPhone? right? But now
Yeah.
whether you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you might hate it, but you can't live without it. Right? It's a blessing. It's a cursing and it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
So Finale3D Pro is like that. I hope it's more of the blessing than the curse.
Yes.
At least we're not sending you notifications 24/7. But so with Pro, you know, a lot of these things are a little bit abstract on paper or on website, but like you get all the bells and whistles. You get the ability to get visual diagrams of your layouts of your racks for your show. And because you get rack layout diagrams, you can, a little bit more advanced functionality is like you can assign the firing system, the modules and cues or pins as we call them, to the products and racks in the field in a way that makes it most efficient for setup.
Yep.
So the first time you do your first Pyro musical, you'll end up with a situation where your show won't be able to be set up because wires need to reach places they just don't physically go.
Correct.
But if you have a visual in your design software like Pro gives you, then it makes it easy to see, oh, I designed something I can't set up, and then you can iterate from there. So that's one thing. It's just the ability to get a visual layout of your shoot site, not only just the racks at a specific firing position, but the site overall. So if you are producing shows where you need any kind of permit, you have to go to your local authority having jurisdiction. You probably have to show them some kind of schematic that shows your fallout areas, your control location, fire extinguishers. The Pro version of Finale3D allows you to make that. So like by virtue of designing the show, it almost I qualify that, almost like just falls out automatically if you use the features in Finale. Whereas if you're going to do it using, people say, I just use Google Earth and then I bring it into PowerPoint and then I draw a circle. It's like, yeah, sure, you can do that. And maybe you're already paying for Office, so you don't need to pay anymore, or you just print it and use a coffee cup to draw a circle on it. Fine. But you have to do extra work to get that. It's some amount of extra work, and Finale can do that for you. So it's an extra thing you get kind of automatically. Another reason you might use Finale Pro is because you can create really dynamic scenery. So Finale3D Pro in the virtual environment can download and pull in 2D and 3D Google Maps. So in areas of the world where, especially in urban areas or areas where there's lots of population density, there's incredibly good 3D imagery. So like if you're shooting near buildings or near a stadium, you can bring that imagery right in the Finale and you can see it in your scenery and your show design. So those are just a couple of high points. There's tons more things. It's impossible. We could spend hours on what you can do with Pro. I literally just spent about 16 hours with the customer doing training for them over the course of 3 weeks. And we probably covered 30% of what Pro can do in that 16 hours. So it's pretty incredible. And if you even need a few of those features, it certainly justifies the cost, in my view. If I were doing shows even in my backyard, I don't think I could live without it. So
Well, I mean, a lot of it is like they say now is time is money, right? So how many hours are you spending doing some of that stuff manually versus if you just recoup that time essentially back and you just you spent the extra money for a higher version, right? To save that time, you're making that money back in the amount of time you're saving where you could be doing other things.
Yeah, people say like, hey, Drew, I do fireworks as a hobby, so like my time. If you're saving time, my time is free because it's my hobby. And it's like, yeah, maybe. Or maybe your time's still valuable because you also want to be doing other things. You also have other hobbies, or you want to spend time with your family, or, you don't want it to just take so long to do the mundane parts of designing a fireworks show. So your time is worth something probably. Yeah. And Pro, once you learn to become proficient, Pro is going to definitely save you a lot of time. Now, that being said, I'm not here to give you a commercial for Pro. You can, give Finale a try at any level and see what you think. We love feedback also. I think David and Donnie can attest to the fact that, we try to take feedback. We try to fold it into the feature set that exists at every level. And I would say the vast majority, I mean, I'm a pyro too. So like before joining Finale, I was doing pyro professionally and as a hobbyist. So I bring that experience to Finale, but we rely on the whole community to give us feedback on what Finale should do, and Finale's built around that. So we really like that.
Yep.
If you have questions, Drew will respond 24/7 pretty much. Like you can
Don't
email Drew, you'll get a
He
response anytime.
I am that
Drew's
guy.
like, don't overpromise my time.
Yeah, if I don't reply, I lose my job. So I want to mention just really briefly, we spent a fair amount of time on licenses, but
Yes.
I think it's worth it because people, they definitely get hung up on what do I choose. I do want to mention, like, if you scroll down a little bit in this page, you get a little bit more of analysis paralysis because you see, oh my God, there's more licenses.
Yeah.
And the takeaway here is that if you're an individual and you have one computer you want Finale on, you can completely ignore these 3 licenses down here.
Yep.
So Finale is these products are single user, single machine licenses. So if you buy Lite, you can activate it on one computer. You buy Hobbyist, you can activate it on one computer. You buy Pro, one computer. You can move your license from one computer to another up to 12 times per year. We think hopefully you're not breaking or upgrading your computer more than that. And so that's like sort of a common sense limit. The idea is it's for one computer. If you're an individual and you have 2 computers, like one person, 2 computers, maybe a desktop for at home, a laptop you take on the road or at the shoot site, you can get an extra machine license. It doesn't make sense for a Lite user because Lite's less than the extra machine, but it's really a discount if you have Hobbyist or Pro. And what that does is if you buy Hobbyist, you buy an extra machine, you now get Hobbyist and 2 computers. You buy Pro and extra machine, you now get Pro and 2 computers. One person, 2 computers.
Yeah.
If you have a company like David, and you have a team of users, that's where these additional user licenses come in. So if you're an individual, completely ignore them. If you have a team and you want to have additional designers on your team being able to use Finale, you can do that at a discount. And that's what these additional users licenses are for. Otherwise, you can just totally ignore them. And now finally, I'll just show that we do have also these blue links here lead down to the full feature comparison. So if you really want to dive in and get nitty gritty about what's the exact differences between Lite, Hobbyist, and Pro, I've tried really hard to give a lot of information here, including sort of tool tips that explain what each version does to try to demystify it as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you guys have the forum here on this page. So if you have any other questions, feel free to jump in the forums and ask questions or scroll, or I'm assuming there's a search bar in there that you can just search questions. And
yeah, that's a great point. Like absolutely. So I would recommend, like I like to say that the hub for all Finale content is the Help Center.
Yes.
So right here, this link at the top of the page brings you to our Help Center. And the Help Center consists of 3 main buckets. The first is our documentation, which you can think of as sort of like a manual. We're often asked, like, do you have a manual I can print? No, because Finale changes like every 3 days to something. Like we're constantly improving the product, and that there's good and bad. But the bad is like the manual would be outdated a month after it's printed, right? So we have documentation. It's online. You can view that. That's our technical documentation. We have video tutorials. I want to point out there's a lot more video tutorials here than are on YouTube. Because YouTube is not the hub for our support content. YouTube is more kind of like the videos of side-by-side comparisons of real-life shows versus Sims and some kind of marketing content. At one time, years ago, it was a place that there are support videos, and I don't take them down just because it makes Finale discoverable, but the videos here are curated, and there's lots more videos than you would find on the YouTube channel. So definitely this is the hub for videos. To David's point, there's a giant search box. It searches everything. It searches the documentation, it searches the videos, and it searches what David actually mentioned first, which was the community forum. There's also search built into the community forum. So you come here, this brings you to the community. Here's a map of Finale3D users worldwide. And you can click on, if you're in the United States, you're probably clicking English forum. This is the forum that's most active. And then you've got tons of topics. You can search the forum here as well.
Yep.
The Help Center searches everything. So, it's a good way to find those resources. When you're new, though, I recognize it's tough because you don't necessarily know the terminology for the thing you want to search for. And that's where like browsing the forum and browsing the documentation can be helpful. And also, like, feel free to reach out. I know how intimidating it can be to just get starting out. So, yeah.
And the form is available whether you're a Finale user or not, correct? It's just open for anybody.
Yeah, so if you're not logged in, you can browse the forum. So you don't
Okay.
even need an account.
Okay.
First of all, creating a Finale3D account is totally free. There's no credit card required to create an account. Once you have an account, you can converse on the forum. You can read the forum without even having an account. But if you wanted to ask a question on the forum, all you have to do is create your own, create a username and password. And that's incredibly easy to do. And then you can post on the forum. You can, like I said, you can browse without. And yeah, so it's easy to do. So there's no reason not to. And the forum's pretty active, so you'll get I monitor the forum. I'll try to reply to people personally, and we also have other users who are really helpful at replying to others. So it's very much we try to make it as much as possible a community atmosphere.
Very cool. Good.
We can talk a little bit about like, okay, I want to get the software. Like,
Yeah.
where do I go? So,
Yes.
I did mention on the pricing page that there is a download button that downloads the latest, what we call release or latest build of the software. You might be thinking, well, don't I need a different download button for Light, Hobbyist, and Pro? And the answer is no. There's only one Finale3D software, but within Finale3D, when you log in as a user, the feature set you get is a function of your license. And the licenses are all cloud-based. So if you don't have a license, you get demo mode, which we talked about earlier.
Yep. And
of course, if you have Light, Hobbyist, or Pro, you get that feature set. So you don't have to like uninstall and reinstall Finale. It's just a function of what license you have. You can also get the software from our download page. Like if you reached out to me and said, Drew, I want Finale, where do I go? I would send you to the download page. And this can also be a little overwhelming, but for all practical purposes, for most people, what you want is what we call the latest full release. And in this case, full really means kind of like has the most testing, is the most stable, and is backed by the most hours of review by the Finale team and also our beta users. If you want to be on the bleeding edge, having the latest and greatest features, like David right now is working on a show for David and Donnie both, sorry.
Yeah. No.
Working on a show for CobraCon, and they really like something we're working on, something brand new. And so they're like, well, these names of these releases, they include the date. So you can see that this release came out in November 2024, but we have a series of, these are listed chronologically with the newest at the top. We've done a series of releases of more features all the way up to the 29th. So even in the last week, we've put out more features, but they're in what we call beta. So take that with a grain of salt. Like you're getting the latest and greatest, but you can expect a few more bugs. No known bugs, but there just could be some bugs and maybe some issues that crop up. It's unlikely to break your show or anything, but you can download any release anytime and install it. So if you download the latest beta and you have a problem, you can always go back. So these are all standalone installers. Installing Finale3D is crazy easy. There's no like external dependencies or long wizard you have to go through and explain your life story. Literally just download it, double click it, it runs and installs Finale, and you're off to the races.
Yep.
So what is your guys' cadence or process to move from a beta into a full release?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We generally try to make sure that we've finished a specific development cycle. So we want to polish off a set of features, and then we promote those features to being a full release after there's a number of hours of testing from our beta testers and our team. So we also try not to do full releases at a really regular cadence, because if you're running Finale and you open the software and it says there's another update, we know that on one hand, it's great that we're adding new features and you're getting those features for free by being a paid subscriber to Finale.
Yeah.
It also can be a little annoying if there's a constant update. So if you're running a full release, you only get notified when there's a new full release. And that cadence tends to be something between monthly and quarterly. Of course, you can always decline updates. Like if you're in the height of the 4th of July season and you don't want to update, you can just click no. There's no necessarily obligation to update Finale. One thing that you might want to be mindful of before you of course, people will ask me the questions pretty common, say, hey, what kind of computer do I need to run Finale, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple, for those who are not that tech savvy, an answer that I like to give is If you have a computer that's running Windows on it, there's a good chance it can run Finale.
Okay.
To find out for sure, download and install it. If it works, it works. Like, it's not going to break your computer if it doesn't work. It's just that the software is going to give you some errors, or it's not going to give you the simulation, and you'll know. And then if it doesn't work, you'll know, hey, I just have to uninstall Finale, and if I want to pursue using the software, I need to get a new computer.
Yeah.
The more technical answer is kind of listed at a high level in this blue info box at the top of the download page. Starting in June of 2024, we stopped supporting Windows 7 and Windows 8. So users kind of hit that snag once in a while. Now, if you're still running an old version of Windows 7, which aren't supported by Microsoft anymore either, but of course there are computers out there running Windows 7 and Windows 8. You need to upgrade to Windows 10 or Windows 11. You need a computer that has 8 gigabytes of RAM. Pretty much any computer these days has 8 gigabytes of RAM, so that's not that much.
Yeah.
The biggest characteristic when it comes to selecting the computer that matters is your GPU or your graphics card.
Yes.
Finale will likely run on any computer that was bought in the last 5 years that does not have a dedicated graphics card, a computer that's not made for gaming, but it probably won't perform very well, and it probably won't perform very well with scenes that have a lot of effects being fired in them, because the simulation will kind of slow down. If you want Finale to perform well, you want to get a computer that's advertised for gaming or has a dedicated graphics card. We recommend the GTX 1060 as kind of the baseline. And for those who are familiar with graphics cards, you'll know, like, that graphics card is now like a decade old. So that's not even, it's not like we're saying you need to go out and buy a $3,000 or $4,000 laptop or desktop machine. Like, graphics cards have gotten crazy expensive because of AI, and NVIDIA can charge whatever they want for them.
Yeah.
But you can go on, if you've got an old desktop machine, there's a good chance you could go on eBay and for $100 buy a used graphics card to get your machine, give your machine a huge boost if you feel confident in doing that. But you can spend, I think you could still go to Best Buy and grab, or Amazon. And last time I did some research, like for less than $1,000, probably $600, $700, maybe $800, you can get a good baseline gaming laptop. So it doesn't cost a fortune to buy a computer that can run Finale. You just have to be mindful about that dedicated graphics card. You really want, ideally, some kind of NVIDIA GeForce graphics card, or AMD Radeon is also fine. We find that the NVIDIA is a little bit more stable, but if you don't have it, don't let that discourage you. You can always try. On the Mac side, common question, like, can you run Finale on a Mac? There is no, Mac users don't like this answer, but there's no native version of Finale for Mac. So you have to install like evil Microsoft Windows on your Mac to run Finale. If you're running an older MacBook Pro, an Intel-based Mac, you can use Boot Camp or Parallels as the virtualization environment. So you install either Boot Camp or Parallels, you install Windows in that, and then you can run Finale inside of that. So first you need to get Windows on your Mac, then you can install Finale on Windows on your Mac. Last but not least, if you have a MacBook that's an Apple Silicon MacBook, M1, it's got the M1 chip in it, the M2, the M3, the M4. Those are that's Apple Silicon versus the Intel-based Macs. You can only run Parallels. Boot Camp is no longer an option for the virtualization. So if you're on the Mac side and you're looking at getting Parallels, that's a product from a company, there's a company that produces, that's not a Finale product. So you go out and you get the Parallels for desktop software. I strongly recommend you get Parallels Pro because that allows more of your system resources from your Mac to be available in the Windows environment, and it'll make Finale run a lot better than it will if you go cheap on the you do have to buy Parallels. It's another subscription, I'm sorry. But buy a cheap Windows laptop or put Parallels on your Mac. Those are your choices with new Macs.
Yeah, that's the boat I'm at. I've got a newer MacBook Pro, and I use the Pro version of Parallels, and I mean, for the most part, it does fairly well. I mean, even with our CoverCon show where it's very, very heavy Finale, it'll still render the show, and it'll still play through.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and minimize the website, and I've already got Finale installed, so I'm just going to fire it up. When Finale comes up, you get the main window and you get the login dialog. They were on my other screen, so I've just dragged it over to the screen that you guys can see. To log in, this is a good tip actually here. The first time you use Finale, you're going to be clicking create an account, You're going to get an email. Once you verify, you have to use a real email address because you have to get an email. You have to verify your address to get logged in. The first time you log in, you need to enter your password. And a good tip for you, though, is every time you log in using your password, this does require an internet connection for the login.
Yeah.
For 14 consecutive days after any online login means you entered your password and you didn't check this box. For the next 14 days after you do that, you can log in offline. So as an example, since I've been online recently, I can just check this. I don't even need to enter my password, and boom, I'm in. People say, Drew, I don't like typing my password all the time. You only have to type your password once every 14 days.
I didn't know that.
So that's a good trick.
That's good. Yeah, that's good to know.
And you might be thinking, well, doesn't Finale run differently offline? The answer is no, all the features are exactly the same. The only difference is you don't get what we call a sync. We're going to get into that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't get a synchronization at startup, but you can see how much quicker the startup is because you didn't go out and do anything online at all. And this is what you'd want to do. So if you're going to take Finale to a shoot site, you would want to log in before you leave the office or leave home and make sure you've got that 14-day offline period reset. Then when you get to the shoot site, you just log in offline. You can open your show. You can make any changes. Generally, you can do almost everything. There's going to be some exceptions, but you can do almost everything in Finale being offline. There's no difference the way the software runs. When you first launch up Finale, you get 3 windows. We call this on the left the design window. This is where you're going to see the simulation of your show. Down at the bottom, you've got the artificial grass, and by default you've got some what we call firing positions, and they've got names P1 through P9. Just some example firing positions, just so you don't start up Finale with a totally blank slate.
Yep.
You've also got a collection of effects here up in the effects window. This is the window in the upper right is the effects window, and you've got a series of effect collections. There is a bunch of effects. How many we got? About 6,600 effects that are built into Finale. I do all the time get the question like, Drew, I don't see my fireworks in there. Like, I guess Finale can't work for me. And the answer is Finale can simulate, God knows. I don't even want to estimate. There's virtually a limitless number of effects that Finale can simulate. FedEx products, cakes, candles, shells, reloadables, whatever. But they're not all like on the screen when you launch the software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This effect collection is built into Finale just so there's something for you to click on the first time you see the software. It's not the collection of everything available to you. Not to mention you have the ability to create your own effects, which we're going to get into as well.
Yes.
So you've got generic effects and you've got some other effect collections in there. We'll get into that in more detail in a bit. I want to mention the script window. The script window is when you go to shoot a show that's run by an automated firing system, either semi-automatic or fully automatic, Pyro Musical, you're going to have to load some kind of script file into your firing system. The script file is the instructions for the firing system on how to shoot the show. That gets built here in the script window. Right now it's blank, just for the same reason that the simulation is blank, for the same reason that the timeline down here is blank, which is because we haven't put any fireworks in the show yet.
Yep.
So as you build your show, that'll get fleshed out.
Drew, how do I add more effects? Like I want more effects in here. Like, are there other effects I can add?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of ways to get effects, and we have some things up our sleeve. I'm not sure how much Neil gave you on that, but we do have some projects in the works to give you more effects. We affectionately call our highest priority project internally as the Where's My Stuff project.
Okay.
Because pretty much everybody who comes into Finale goes, where's my stuff? If you don't have my stuff, there's no reason for me to be here.
Yeah.
So we really want to deliver your stuff. So this is where I press on guys like David to put their company's stuff into Finale. And we're also dedicated to making a lot of simulations and provide them to users. So right now we have what's called the supplier catalog program. So just as a quick reminder, looking at this, you have a few effect collections. One is called generic effects. That's the built-in collection. Per show effects is a little bit technical, but this is the stuff that's in the show. Since we haven't put anything in the show, there's nothing here. And you have your own My Effects collection. When you first start Finale out of the box, it's going to be blank because there's nothing in your My Effects. And that's really all we've got. So if you want more stuff, the best way to start out going to get it is to go into the File menu and choosing Catalogs of Effects. And that'll take you to this little dialogue that explains that you need to go online to your online account, and there you can choose catalogs to turn on, turn off. So if I click continue, that literally just loads up my web browser and takes me to it's the exact same as going online, logging into the Finale3D website and going to supplier catalog settings.
Okay.
So that's exactly what that's doing. This is brand new. You guys might not have even seen this yet. We have just started. There's always the question of Finale has all these catalogs. Some of them have good sims. Some of them don't have good sims. So we have started adding Finale verified label with a little check here, just as kind of a way to help communicate to users, especially new users, especially users that don't necessarily know the product. It's like if you know the fireworks already in real life, you can tell if a sim's not very good. But if you're just new to fireworks, you really need kind of help knowing like what's good and what's not good. So as an example, we have a brand new Dominator 1.4 catalog. You can turn that on and you're going to get verified Finale sims. So we've got the word verified next to all the sims that that we've actually checked. So like here's the RKM catalog. Dave, we got to get that. We got to get that
verified.
So, yeah. So that's not just on you. That's on me too. So we work together to make sure that all those sims are in good shape. So we've got a good collection of catalogs. A lot of these are not US. So there's fireworks brands all over the world. So a lot of these, if you're new to fireworks, you might be seeing things that aren't available in the United States at all. And we'll eventually have ways to kind of separate American fireworks versus European fireworks for those who are new or just getting started. I do want to mention, like, I don't recommend just going through here and turning them all on. And the main reason is because
too much.
The main reason is because it can really affect the performance of Finale when you do what we call sync with network. So just as an example, I'll grab a couple more. I'll turn on the RKM catalog. Come down here, turn on RKM. And, Raccoon's really popular right now. I'll turn on Raccoon. So you wait a minute and it'll say that it's finished the process. And it just takes a few seconds. It'll give you confirmation, something like that. And then you go into Finale and you go back to the file menu and you do a sync with network. Now, I mentioned earlier you can log in offline. When you log in offline, no syncing is done, but you can still trigger it. So if you know that you have an internet connection, you can still trigger it. And then Finale goes out and it downloads whatever catalogs you've subscribed to. So I just added a few catalogs, and so it'll take a little bit of time to download those. If you turn them all on, you might be waiting 5 minutes. We're working on that performance piece, but that's generally why I recommend just only turning on the catalogs that you actually need.
Yeah.
All right, so now if I go back to my list here, I now have Raccoon, I have RKM, I have Dominator 1.4 Pro, and so, let's see, David, what do you got? You got 294 products, and I think these are just the house brand products, right?
They are, currently.
And I know most of these do have great sims, so we got to get that. We'll get that checkbox added there, but so that's how you get, kind of the basics of how you get more in terms of getting simulations that are already pre-made. So the extent of the sims that are pre-made, so I keep saying simulations, product, simulations for real world products. The extent of them now is what comes built into Finale, which is really just a small set of example effects plus the supplier catalogs. And then beyond that, that's where we get into, creating your, there's a very strong likelihood that you've got some product or some cake that you have that you really like from a supplier that you buy fireworks from that isn't in Finale yet, and that's where you get into making your own cakes. And I think we'll cover that in a separate video.
When I'm coming in here, Drew, and I'm kind of going to get started, get set up, are there any particular maybe some user settings or some show settings that I should be maybe setting to make sure that my timing is going to be the most accurate to fit the firing system I'm using? Are there things I need to select based on the firing system I have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I will qualify this by saying at the moment I'm running Finale3D Pro. And so there are certainly, if you're running Hobbyist and Pro, the user interface looks very similar. A lot of the options are similar. We're going to get into show settings here now. But for the light users, if you have Finale3D Lite, you're going to have a smaller set of settings just because the settings don't necessarily apply. So we really wanted the light version to have a streamlined feature set for the benefit of not being as overwhelming. But to Donnie's point, there are show settings that are specific, that can be firing system specific. So when we say firing system specific, there are to those who are new to Pyro, there are many major firing systems. We're supporting now over 40 firing systems from around the world. In the US alone, there's more than a half dozen professional and hobbyist firing systems. So Finale supports all of them, and so you do need to tailor your work environment a little bit to the system you're using. So let's use, I think we can all agree the most popular system right now is Cobra, right? So there's a ton of great systems on the market, but I want to speak to, without giving any preferential treatment, just speak to one that I know is very popular and also one that you guys use, which is Cobra. So you can go to, for example, the show menu, and this is where you have show settings. When you're first starting a show, I do like to tell users it's really smart as a first step to put in your show info. So here's where you'd put in the name of your show, the show date, the location. You can do some optional fields, like here you could say firing system, and then you could put Cobra, right? And that would come. The reason you might want to fill this in is because all of the stuff you type in here comes out on your reports, it comes out on your labels, the aids that you print to do your setup in the field. So if you got 2 shows in the same day and you print 2 sets of labels or 2 reports, like really good to know which one's for which show so they go on the right truck, right?
Yeah, and this is really helpful for exactly like you're saying, if you're having more than one show, or if you're scripting more than one show, you're not losing track of labels and mixing them up.
And even if you're thinking, Drew, I'm just a backyard guy, like it doesn't matter for me. It still adds some polish to your reports. Otherwise, you just don't get any good info, on your reports and things. If you got a company, or you just, got something you want to add as an image, you can add your company logo to the reports. You can select your firing system here if you want. We'll come back to these things in a bit. I want to go more specific to Donnie's question. I would say show information is a good starting point is something you want to do to personalize the show and to customize it for a specific event and date. After that, in terms of the work environment, there's a ton of show settings, especially in the Pro version, but you don't need to worry about all of them on day one. In fact, you don't really need to worry about any of them, but some of them are kind of nice to know about. So as an example, the very first one at the top is the effect time format. So if you've used different firing systems in your past, you might know that different firing systems have different resolutions that they can fire to. Not every firing system fires to the same level of precision. The Cobra firing system, which we've been talking about, for example, has 1/100th of a second timing resolution. That means you can fire something at a given time, and the next time you can fire something is 1/100th of a second later. Now, you can also fire multiple things simultaneously at the same time, but the increments between firings, the smallest increments are hundreds of seconds. So for that, you'd want to be scripting in our default time format, which is seconds. So this here stands for minutes, and then a colon, and then seconds, and then 3 decimal places. So the format is seconds, milliseconds. That's why it says MS. If you had a firing system, for example, like a Pyro digital firing system, which is a great system as well, professional system, been around for a long time, one of the original digital firing systems that changed the world, you would be operating in frames. So if you don't need to worry about this unless you have a firing system that operates in frames. And even if you forget to change this, it can always be tweaked later. So don't fret about it. The real one that's going to make more of a difference, so like, for Cobra or for most American firing systems, they run on seconds and not frames. You're going to want to look at your snap to resolution on your timeline. So think of the timeline as a ruler, right? And think of the increments on the timeline as the resolution. So like if you have a ruler that has 1,000 little increments in every second, that's the 1,000 snap to resolution. That means you could, when you're adjusting the timing of something within your show, the smallest increment you could adjust within is 1,000th of a second.
Yeah.
None of the common firing systems, especially in the United States, support 1/1000th of a second timing resolution. So generally what you're going to do, for example, for Cobra, is you're going to choose 100th. If you don't, it's okay, because Finale is going to automatically round to the nearest 100th when you export your script.
Okay.
But if you really want to see in Finale times on the timeline that correspond to what you're going to get in your script, you could change this. I'll give you a quick example, and that'll kind of also segue into how you get something into a show, which is really the fun thing, right? So let's click on a firing position and just choose a time on the timeline. I can literally just click anywhere on the timeline. That moves what we call the playhead. And then I can choose an item. So let's see, what do we got here? These are all cakes, right? Have you got?
They are cakes, yeah.
You got slices in here?
We don't have any slices.
All right, let's drop in a cake and see what we get.
Yeah.
So there's a cake, no problem. So we just dropped in a 100-shot cake, and there it is. This looks good, falling leaves.
Yep.
So that cake comes in right here, and now we've got it on the timeline. Now we were talking about timing, so let's just focus on that for a second. I added this cake, the effect time for the cake, the time the visual effect appears, at 9 seconds, 0.979. And that's a time that the firing system doesn't support. If I zoom way in, I'm using the mouse wheel on my mouse to zoom in. If I drag this, I can move it, thousands of seconds. So that's those increments. Like those are the smallest possible increments. So for example, if I had something like this, when that gets exported, that 10.028 seconds is going to become 10.03 seconds for a firing system that supports hundreds, rounded to the nearest. But instead of scripting to the thousandth of a second, I can go to show settings, change my timeline snap to resolution to hundreds. And now when I click and drag an item, it snaps to the hundredth of a second. So I'm no longer able to choose a time and script to a time that my firing system can't shoot. And so that's what timeline resolution is all about. And I think that's a handy one to set to make your simulation of your show match what your firing system can produce.
Yeah.
In terms of other settings, I don't think there's anything that's really key that you really need to know about, like as you're getting started. There's some cool stuff here. The ability to show how many modules and cues or pins you need. The ability to change how the angle, if you're just starting out, I strongly recommend going with the default angle convention.
Yes.
This is you get different companies, different individuals, they treat angles differently. It's really interesting. Not if you are shooting something, say, at a slight angle to the left, to some people that's -30, to other people that might be -60, or it might be 60. It's just there. And so I recommend you going with the default if you're just starting out, but we do have options for people who have different conventions, the way they work with angles. And that gets a little technical, but the features are there, the options are there. You can go through them, you can experiment with them. And it's pretty cool. This is actually a new feature. I don't know if you know about this one, David.
I don't think
or
so.
Donnie. We have a feature that allows you to nudge things on the timeline. So if you want to make micro adjustments, maybe to line something up with the music, you can use the nudge feature, which is Control Shift and the arrow keys. And this here controls how much the nudge is. So by default, it matches that timeline snap to resolution we set to hundreds, but you can set it to other things as well. So I'll give you an example here. If I select this cake and I do Control Shift and arrow to the right, I'm nudging that cake. If you take a look at the effect time here, I'm Control Shift arrow key nudges that cake 100th of a second every time I hit it. So instead of trying to use my mouse to drag it to the right point, I can just nudge it a little bit to the left or right. As you become a power user in Finale, you start to learn more and more of the keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
And you start to, you become really quick if you know the keyboard shortcuts. And so that's a brand new one. That's only been out.
I really like that. Yeah, that's going to be super helpful.
So there's a tip for you.
I mean, I think this right here is a good point for us to maybe,
I agree,
close out this first episode here. We've got people to the point now where they can open Finale and get in, and we put some stuff on the timelines. And I think as we kind of go forward in some future episodes, we're really going to dive into some different features and actually kind of putting some stuff together and creating some custom stuff as we kind of go forward.
All right. Well, as always, be sure to check out our website, pyrounleashedpodcast.com. Join our Discord and come hang out with us. And I forgot, on the website there is merch. So go buy some and start repping it at any of your local events.
And that want to thank Drew for being with us for this episode, and we're gonna have plenty more of these throughout the season. So you're all gonna get to know Drew really well as we kind of go through this season. So we really appreciate the time that he's put into helping us with this content and putting that information out there for everybody. But we will see you guys on our next regular scheduled podcast coming up on next Wednesday, and you'll probably see one of these again probably in a couple of weeks. So in the meantime, go out there and unleash your inner pyro with us.
This has been another episode of Pyro Unleashed. Come back each week for more industry insights, technical tips, and awesome pyro designs. Have fun out there, be safe, and as always, remember to unleash your inner pyro with us.